Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters, and welcome to my review of Sick.
Oh my God! Just one moment.
Unlock the door! Unlock the door!
You have a mask, don't you? You're masked.
What?
I can't let you in. It's not safe.
Are you kidding me, lady? Please!
Alrighty, so yeah, this is the new Kevin Williamson written flick. Yeah, this is a kind of a surprise drop. You know, we knew that this was coming out. I just didn't think that it was going to be coming out as soon as the trailer hit, because it literally hit, I think last week we covered it on the Sunday Scaries, and then it was coming out this Friday. So, you know, it's always kind of a red flag, in my opinion, when something drops that fast. And not to mention where it's dropping. It's dropping on Peacock. And I have to be honest, on the Scaries, I talked about it and I said that the trailer felt very much like They Slash Them, which I thought was a cool concept, a cool title. But at the end of the day, it was a pretty middle of the road, leaning a little harder towards the not so great slasher film. And with this being a slasher, you know, it kind of had the same tone, same vibes. But we did have that Kevin Williamson stamp of approval on it. So, that gives us a little something more to chew on here. And I finally sat down and watched it this morning. And was this really that bad? Was it as bad as They Slash Them? No. This was definitely watchable, I would say. I found myself really kind of caught up in just the short story they were telling here. This movie's only an hour and 23 minutes. And they really don't waste a lot of time. You know, what I was impressed with was the kind of representation of COVID itself and kind of really putting you back into that time. They did a really good job of making that work. And overall, I gotta say, I didn't mind the characters. I thought that they made a lot of smart decisions, which, is definitely a good sign of a competent writer behind this, because too many of these films, especially, and I'm going to keep comparing They Slash Them to this, where it's just characters making really dumb decisions for no reason, it seems like. It's this one, they did make a lot of smart choices. There were one or two, of course, that got them caught up into some unfortunate situations, I should say. Especially one involving a blanket. I was just kind of like, why did you do that? But it's something where I guess you kind of have to have the give and take when it comes to a modern slasher, because everything's kind of been done for the most part when you're telling a story like this. Setting it around COVID, setting it around quarantine is interesting. It's definitely something I think we'll see a lot more of as the time progresses and we get a little further away from the pandemic. But I think what they were able to execute with just the characters themselves, they weren't annoying. They really held their own in some points. And overall, I was not bothered. They weren't super compelling either, though. So it wasn't something where I'm sitting there rooting for anybody, really hoping that somebody gets out of it. It was just serviceable and not annoying, which, I guess is pretty good. Because, too often, like I said, we fall down that rabbit hole of these characters just kind of being throwaway and, really not the best. As far as the killer and the twist of the film, because with Kevin Williamson, there's going to be a twist. That was extremely weak. I think that this is definitely something that when you finally get what's revealed, that's going to be the make it or break it for you. Thankfully, or I guess, maybe not so thankfully, depending on which side you sit on, that comes within the last like 10 minutes of the film. So it's one of those things where it's like, if you are enjoying yourself up to that point, that'll probably be where it's like, okay, I'm ready to hop off the wagon, and you don't have much longer to sit through. But for me, it just didn't work. I felt like it was very paper thin and very much like you're grasping at straws here to try to get us to care. I think that if you had set up a couple of things in the beginning and maybe reestablished your opening a little better, you would have been able to lay a stronger foundation for that twist. And, I think that it doesn't overall diminish my enjoyment in the film. Like I said, I went in with very low expectations on this one. And the fact that I was able to stay as engaged and not hate the characters was a good high sentiment that I can give this. But yeah, when it comes down to the meat and potatoes of that twist, it's just it it's kind of laughable. I'm not gonna lie, extremely weak is how Luke had put it. But other positives I can give this to kind of jostle back and forth here. I do like the way that this film was shot. There's a lot of confidence behind the camera. There's a lot of these kind of interestingly, I think they are kind of cutting it to make it feel this way. But there is a very interesting oneer towards the start of this film. And I do kind of like it. The violence and the actual fights and things themselves when the killer is present are very intense, and they do a really good job of making them less goofy. Like I love the Scream films, but and some people might bash me for saying this, there is a little bit of that goofiness to Ghostface when he's just getting knocked over and tripping over his cape and stuff, or his robes. And you don't have that here. The killer's look, although not very unique or impressive at all, is pretty tight. So he can kind of be a bit more flexible and do what he needs to do with his weapons. And overall, I think those fights and kills are very intense, and I did enjoy it. Again, characters do make smart decisions, and at one point there is a character who is really leaning into somebody or really bashing somebody in the head, I should say. And you are kind of just sitting there like, good, thank you. I'm glad that you kept doing that, because way too many times we see in slasher films where they just kind of let the bad guy go after just one or two licks, and it's just like, no, that's not good. But yeah, overall I would say that Sick, if this came out in theaters, I'd probably be a little bit harsher on it. I probably wouldn't have had as good of a time. But it is something where, since it is on streaming and I could just throw it on, and it's not asking for a large time commitment here, it's not the worst thing. I definitely give this a middle of the road. I say if you're interested in this film and you want to see what's new from Kevin Williamson, then definitely check it out. But if you are expecting a little more from this and you wanted something that's like up to the levels of like a Scream, you're not going to get that here. This is not that kind of instant classic. I don't really see this sticking with anybody as time goes on. I kind of feel like it's going to have its flash this weekend and then probably disappear as other horror flicks begin to permeate 2023. Yeah, so overall, it gets like a moderate recommendation from me. I would say definitely, as long as you're interested, check it out, of course. But if it is something where you're kind of just like looking for reviews to see if it's for you, that's really where I would say maybe stay away from it, But it is your time. You don't have to spend any money if you aren't already a subscriber to Peacock. So, it's just your time. And like I said, it's not a big time commitment. So maybe it's worth it to you. I guess you'll have to check it out and find out. But for me, I would just say go in cautiously. But that's all I got to say about Sick. Again, it's a little bit of a disappointment for me, but not as bad as I think it could have been. I think this is much better than They Slash Them. But still, it didn't hit the high marks of me sitting here to be able to gush about it. And, when you have somebody like Kevin Williamson attached to the material, you kind of hope for a little bit of a higher quality. But yeah, I mean, I guess this was just a project he wanted to do while in quarantine, and he got to do it, got it out of the system. But I hope that we see more from him. I would really like for him to kind of come back and start writing some more movies and give us maybe our modern day Scream. It doesn't have to be a slasher, but I'd love to see this guy do more with the other subgenres of horror. Maybe even have him play with like a classic monster or something in some aspects. But alrighty, guys, so that's going to do it for me here. Of course, check out our other reviews up on the channel. We got Skinamarink up right now, as well as some other videos coming to you. Of course, tomorrow we have Sunday Scaries. And yeah, it's going to be a good time on the channel here. Lots more to come as the weeks go on. And alrighty, well, I guess until next time, I am Dylan Newell. And stay scared.
Where's your mask? This isn't a vacation, it's a quarantine.
A quarantine in style.